I'm delighted this morning that Philip Ingram is with me. Great to have you in the studio, Philip. You well?
Good morning. Yeah, very well, very well. I see we're almost matching.
Almost coordinated.
Both in, your accent and shirts.
Well, exactly. Same part of the world as well. Yes, indeed. Well, great to have you. Philip is, of course, a former senior military intelligence officer and commentator on all sorts of things, including the story that I am deeply troubled by. There's a woman called Sue Carr, okay? She is Lady Sue Carr. She's the Lady Chief Justice. Let's have a look at her if you are watching on the screen. We'll put a picture up of her in a second. I am really worried about her. I am really worried about the pernicious influence, I believe, in my strongly held personal belief, the pernicious influence she has on public life in this country. She is the Lady Chief Justice. She's the most senior judge in this country, and that's fair enough and good for her, and she's had an amazing career. But she's saying certain things, she's making certain things clear that I think are pernicious and wrong. First of all, on the 18th of February, what she did was Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer both criticised a judge's ruling on an immigration case. What happened was there was a scheme that was designed for Ukrainians fleeing the war. Badenoch said, a judge has now ruled in their favour. This is what the scheme was designed to do. This was a family, a Gazan family, that were allowed to come over. And she said this is not what the scheme was designed to do. This decision is completely wrong and cannot be allowed to stand. Are the government planning to appeal any points of law, and if so, which one? This was a family of 6, a mother, a father and 4 children, had sought permission to live with a British relative who proved he was able to house and financially support them. This was a Palestinian family given the right to live in the UK under the Ukrainian family scheme. Kemi Badenoch criticised it, leader of the opposition. The Prime Minister criticised it. He said this was not something, that this was not properly what should have been done under the scheme. But Baroness Sue Carr, the Lady Chief Justice, said the remarks were unacceptable and conflicted with the duty of politicians to uphold the rule of law and respect the independent role of judges. Well, let me tell you something. I entirely respect the independence of Sue Carr and other judges. What I don't respect is when they make decisions that are wrong, and we can call them wrong because we have this thing that Sue Carr may not be entirely familiar with, which is called free speech in this country for the moment. She's done something else as well. She's part of something called the Sentencing Council. There are a number of people on the Sentencing Council, senior judges, justices of the peace, people who are involved with the Ministry of Justice as well. Now, what they've done is that they've decided and put forward different guidelines that say that ethnic and faith minorities are less likely to go to prison. Honestly, this is what is happening today on the 6th of March 2025. All ethnic minorities and transgender people convicted of a crime should be treated differently under measures due to come into force in less than 4 weeks. Now, Robert Jenrick, he is the Shadow Justice Secretary. He brought this to the attention of the Justice Secretary, who I'm going to praise in a minute for doing good work on this, but she didn't seem to know what was going on. This is what Robert Jenrick told Mike about an hour ago in this programme.
I was emailed by a magistrate who, like many others across the country, received an email from the Ministry of Justice, Shabana Mahmood's own department, telling them that this was now the rules that they should be abiding by from the end of the month. So how she didn't know about this, God only knows, but that was the case. We got it into Parliament. Now we've got it, thanks to you and many others, into the living rooms and in the newspapers across the country. We've got to stop this. I don't want to live in a country where you are treated differently depending on whether you're a straight white man or a Hindu woman. This is totally wrong and it has to end.
Robert Jenrick is right. What he is saying is factual. Sue Carr, Baroness Carr, who is the Lady Chief Justice, is saying that by an accident of birth, by something that you cannot control, your ethnicity, your background, that you should be treated differently in the legal system. The point of justice in this country, and I speak as someone who was a special advisor in the Ministry of Justice, the point of justice in this country is that justice is blind. We've seen Lady Justice, we've seen her holding her scales with her blindfold on. It's not about what you look like, it's not about your background, it's about whether you've committed a crime or not. Yes, there can be extenuating circumstances, there can be mitigation, your barrister is there, and everybody has a right to have legal representation, and they should be represented the best way they can. And, you know, we have rows about legal aid all the time. I do think that people have a right to legal representation and should get it. But the point is that Baroness Carr, the Lady Chief Justice, and the Sentencing Council are saying that actually it's not about the law, It's not about what you've done or not done. It's not about whether you're a rapist, a murderer, an armed robber. It's not about that. It's about something you can't control. It's about something you're born with. It's about whether you're an ethnic minority. So if you are a straight white man, for example, you should be treated less favourably, say these guidelines, than people who are transgender, neurodiverse, or from an ethnic minority. That is absolute bunkum. It is anti-British. It is against what I would argue the law should be. And who else is on the Sentencing Council? Well, Stephen Parkinson. He's the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. There is a Justice of the Peace, a magistrate. I promise you, what is this person called? She is called Jo King. She must be Jo King, with this ludicrous, unfair, ridiculous idea. Let's have another look at what Robert Jenrick said this morning.
The sentencing guidelines that we uncovered yesterday are a complete disgrace. They show that if you're a woman, if you're neurodiverse, if you're trans, if you're an ethnic minority, if you're from a minority faith group, presumably anyone who isn't Christian, then you are going to get a different treatment under the law. You are less likely to get a custodial sentence. Frankly, this is blatant bias against Christians and straight white men. And many, many people will be rightly furious at this. Your viewers and listeners were sneered at when they said that there was two-tier justice in this country. Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, said that we were conspiracy theorists for saying so. Well, here it is, in black and white, the law of the land, the Sentencing Council issuing guidance to every magistrate in this country, telling them to treat people differently on the colour of their skin or the faith that they abide by. It's wrong and it needs to be stopped.
I'm angry about this, but I want to get it right. I want to know who we're actually criticising here. This is not about Keir Starmer, it's not about two-tier Keir, it's not even about his Justice Secretary Shabnam Mahmood, who was unaware of the new guidance. Why she was unaware, I mean, it's a fairly significant change and she should have been aware of it, and that's a mistake in her team and in her department. However, she said she's going to request the reversal of this, but she can't tell them to do it differently because the Sentencing Council is independent. A Ministry of Justice source said she was incandescent when made aware. Shabnam Mahmood said the Sentencing Council is entirely independent. These guidelines do not represent my views or the views of this government. I will be writing to the Council to register my displeasure and recommend reversing this change to guidance. As someone who is from an ethnic minority background myself, I do not stand for any deferential treatment before the law for anyone of any kind. The law can do good things. The Crown Prosecution Service can do good things. Just look yesterday, Zanzo Zhu, this horrendous, awful rapist, convicted of raping 10 women. There are probably many more, and there's an appeal that's gone out. So the Crown Prosecution Service can work. There was a prosecutor called Sarah Pike, who I saw on the news last night, part of a very important team that prosecutes those horrendous crimes. So it's not as if the system sometimes doesn't work. But it's not working today. It's not working because Baroness Carr, Sue Carr, has got it wrong. She's misunderstood her role. She's not realised what the law is. And I'm saying this to someone who is, you know, the Lady Chief Justice of England and Wales. This is a very, very senior person. She's got a panoply. She's got a Chief Constable. She's got various judges. She's got a Lord Justice. She's got a magistrate. She's even got Stephen Parkinson, who is the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. Yesterday, as I say, his service did very good work in leading to the conviction of this horrendous rapist. But his decision and his consent on this Sentencing Council for these two-tier rules is outrageous. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Philip, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, and there's a lot to unpick in what you've said. You know, looking at the Lady Chief Justice turning around and saying that politicians shouldn't criticise the independence of the judiciary. A lot of our laws are set in this country, first of all by Parliament, and then by precedents as they go through the courts. And what the other thing the Lady Chief Justice should be doing is making sure that what her sentencing is doing, what her judiciary is doing, is not straying into politics. And she's allowing this to happen. Now, I think there is potentially a way that the government can deal with this and the Secretary of State for Justice can deal with this, because someone must have written the terms of reference for the Sentencing Council. They don't write their own terms of reference. So someone must have told them what their left and right of arc, the framework of as to how they can operate, their independence, and set that independence. That's the thing to change, and that must be, that must come from Parliament, because that will give it the level of power.
I want the judiciary to be independent in this country. Yes. I don't want them looking over their shoulder at politicians telling them what to do. But how could she not have known, and how could the council members here, there's about 10 or 12 of them, how can they not have known that this was antithetical to the very clear principles of justice in this country? You know, you're sitting there, Philip, you know, if you, God forbid, had committed a crime, you would be looked at differently from someone who committed exactly the same crime, who happened to be born black or neurodiverse or had become transgender or whatever. That's mad. That's completely mad.
It's completely mad. We've got so many different prosecution systems in this country that actually that happens in many places. You look at the way the civil prosecutions were brought against the post office postmasters.
Yes.
If that had gone through a criminal test, a lot might not have and have been properly investigated by the police and all the rest of it. So there is a two-tier set of justice around different courts that there are in the country anyway at the moment. But this is even further, and this is into the completely unacceptable levels. And where our laws are being interpreted, our judges have to make sure that whenever they get to the point that they feel as if they are changing what Parliament had meant when it set the laws, our judicial system should turn around and say, we cannot rule on this, and fire it back to Parliament for clarification. Because everything goes through Parliament. It's hugely complex. It takes a long time to debate. There will be holes in the legislation. And we've got very clever lawyers, and it's their job to pick their way through the law. But there has to be a backstop, and this has to be something that the Sentencing Council or the Lord Chief Justice or someone has got responsibility for, to turn around and say, actually, no, this is straying into politics. Well, and therefore, to keep that separation, we have to send this back to Parliament again.
Bill in Romsey says, how is it the Sentencing Committee is allowed to change the law? Well, actually, it's not changing the law. This is guidance to judges. This is the reason Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, knew about this, is because a magistrate made him aware of it, because the magistrate had been sent the information. So this is guidance in terms of what they do. It's not quite the law. Brian says, just imagine if she had said all ethnic minorities and transgender people should get tougher sentences. Very good point, Brian. Stuart says the new justice guidelines are only confirming what is happening with two-tier sentencing. Shabna Mahmood is responsible for not controlling the woke judges thus far and not strong enough in rebuffing the judges. Well, listen, I don't know if she can control the judges, and actually I don't even know if it's the role of the Lord Chancellor to control judges, because they're meant to be independent, but the problem is they've gone far beyond their remit. Do you know what? I'm actually going to praise Shabna Mahmood again. It's not often I sit here and praise a Labour Cabinet Minister. Do you know what else she said yesterday? Justice Secretary Shabna Mahmood. Maybe she's someone in the Labour Cabinet we can actually get behind, because she's criticised this mad Sentencing Council plan by Baroness Carr. She's also said on the Nation's Welfare Bill, she said this yesterday, we know that we have too many of our young people currently out of work, not in education, employment and training. She added, there is a moral case here for making sure that people who can work are able to work, and there's a practical point here as well, because our situation is unsustainable. She seems to speak a bit of sense. Are you sure you're a Labour politician, Shabna? Dave is in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Dave, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. I'm sorry, but no. No to the Labour Minister. No to Robert Jenrick as well earlier. I'm sick and tired of people saying, oh, it's disgusting, it's disgraceful. If this were Donald Trump, he would say, when I get in office on the first day, I will abolish the Sentencing Council. So basically, if you work for the Sentencing Council, the day after I get in office, you will lose your jobs, all of you. And that will start to wake these people up. Now, I know we don't have this executive order, but it's time we did, because no one's going to change these laws. We'll have all forgotten about it in 2 weeks' time, and we will just drift back to two-tiered justice. So we need to abolish these blooming people, not give them different guidelines or tell them they're wrong. Just sack the lot of them. All of them.
Well, I do want there to be some judges in this country, Dave. I do want them to have their say. Thank you for your call, Dave. Philip.
Yeah. Well, you're comparing what goes on in the UK and what goes on in the United States is very different. We have to remember that the judicial system in the United States is politicised. The Supreme Court are political appointees, and you tend to find that whenever they make Supreme Court rulings on any judgments that are out there, they tend to fall under party political guidelines.
And I'm not sure I want that either.
We don't want that in this country. We've got the independence of the judiciary. I agree that our judiciary has become exceptionally woke for some reason or other, and this is something where Parliament has got the power to change it, to take that wokery away, to stop criminals being deported because their child doesn't like the chicken nuggets in the country they're going back to, or to stop a child, a paedophile being deported because it might stop him having a family life with his children in this country, which is banned from seeing anyway.
Exactly, you don't want to ruin any children.
This is where our judicial system is broken, and it needs to be given a bit of backbone back.
And my strongly held personal opinion is that Baroness Sue Carr is not the person to fix it.